Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
4 graded stakes races on Saturday out at Belmont at the Big A, and the second of them is race number 6. That is the Belmont Turf Sprint. It is a grade 3. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. Thanks so much for joining us here for the preview of this race. If you can head on down below and subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get great previews like this for all of the big races. I think there's 16 graded stakes races on Saturday all around North America, so plenty for you to get some action. Let's take a look at the field for the Belmont Turf Sprint. David, I think in turf sprints nowadays, anytime the name Cogburn doesn't show up, the rest of the field is going to be happy. They're going to be happy that they don't have to deal with a horse like a Cogburn in any turf sprints. Some of these have faced Cogburn, but looking at the way this race shaped up, I thought that it didn't seem like there was all that much early speed for a race like this, for a turf sprint. What did you think about, just getting a look at the field and who's going to be lining up for this one?
Yeah, with no Cogburn in this race, everyone actually has a chance to win, and it's sort of up in the air as to who's going to want to set the pace, because as you said, I think a lot of horses have been chasing a runner like that or running in some races that have a lot more speed. Not the case here, and I think it's going to really be a jockey's race as to who wants to go forward, because you do have some speed from the number 9, Nothing Better, who certainly is fast enough to get in front of these early, but they haven't exactly been using his speed in recent starts, so I'll be interested to see what the tactics are with that one.
Let's see what the folks over at Timeform US think about the pace of this race, David. I didn't see all that much early speed. I agree. I think the class of the speed is probably Nothing Better drawn to the outside, but this is a horse who has shown that they can sit off a little bit too.
Yeah, and the number 7, Determined Kingdom, I think it becomes a little simpler for a runner like him. He runs his best races when he gets to the front end, so you've got to think that the tactics for Victor Carrasco are going to be to send that one towards the lead. But there are others who have tactical speed, like Senbei, Outlaw Kid on occasion can be close to the pace. Even the number 8, Aragon, has pressed the pace at different points in his career. So I think it remains to be seen how quickly they go up front and whether or not that's going to allow some of the closers to get into the race.
Let's meet the field as we start with the number 1. And this is a horse who actually won a race pretty close to on the lead 2 starts back at Kentucky on September the 1st. And then on September the 7th, came back a week later, was 3rd behind Cogburn in the grade 2 turf sprint. So multiple graded stakes place, David. Probably a horse, though, that will want to be kind of taking back and making one late run. I know they've shown some speed, but just overall, this is a horse who seems like they're better off with those tactics. How do you think he stacks up in here?
Yeah, I mean, Axhelm was towards the lead 2 back, but that was a pretty slow pace at Kentucky Downs, and they sprinted in the second half of that race, not so much the first half. So I think a truer indication of his running style was seen last time when he was one of many who couldn't keep up with Cogburn either early or late in that race, but he was finishing gamely down the center of the course. That was the best race that he's run in quite some time for Saffie Joseph, but he put in those 2 races in a 6-day span at Kentucky Downs. I wonder what that took out of him. Now he's coming back 4 weeks later for this Belmont Turf Sprint, and I'm just not sure the setup is going to be there.
Mischievous Angel is an interesting horse, lightly raced, just going through the overall body of work. You can make a couple excuses for some of this horse's poor performances. One of them came in the Hall of Fame and probably going a little longer than he would like. And, you start to navigate through a couple of the layoffs. Overall, just hasn't done a whole lot wrong. And now 3rd start of the form cycle. 6 furlongs feels like his best trip with his running style. I wouldn't be shocked to see him run well in here. It just is kind of a class test for him, right?
Yeah, we'll take a look at his most recent race at Kentucky Downs when he beat Allowance Foes, and I was really impressed with this victory. I mean, this was not a race that featured a ton of pace, and he just mowed this field down in the stretch when asked for his best and won going away at the finish line. For me, this was by far the best effort that we've ever seen from Mischievous Angel, so it does feel like he's moving in the right direction heading into this race. This will be the first time that he's tackling stakes company since coming in to the Jorge Abreu barn, but they've actually entered this horse in stakes in the past, and he actually hasn't gotten in or has gotten scratched in the late stages, so they've definitely been toying with this idea of moving this horse up, and I think he's earned the shot now.
Yeah, you look at the 5.5 furlong races, probably a little bit shorter than what he would like. And one of those races was chasing lone speed. So I really think that that body of work looks better and better the more you dive on in. Outlaw Kid is the number 3. He has a high ceiling. What we've seen from him is a horse who's capable of throwing up 100 buyer speed figure in a race just like this in a 6 furlong turf sprint. So when you look at the distance, the course, he's run really good races right here. And just feeling like the class level is probably a very good spot for him. He's a multiple stakes winner. He's grade 3 placed, and he's been in the exacta in 6 straight races on turf. How do you think he stacks up here?
Yeah, I think if you isolate his turf sprints, his form gets a little bit more consistent. And he's also a horse that has run very well on the Naira circuit in turf sprints, looking back through his races. So I think this is the right kind of spot for him. He was beating weaker last time at Woodbine and is stepping up in class here, but he's another one who has the tactical speed to be in a position potentially sitting in the pocket, stalking the pace. And that could be a winning trip for him here if he runs one of his A races.
Maya Prince comes over from Colonial, was at Monmouth Park, Laurel Park prior to that. The overall form is not bad, just not a lot of early speed, and he'll probably have to run the race of his life in here in order to compete with some of the top contenders in here. Just based on speed figures, he hasn't really been quite that fast. I thought he comes off of an okay third when he was behind Nothing Better, David, but the problem is that rival, Nothing Better, just has a lot more tactical speed and positional speed. He can work out his own trip a lot more than a horse like Maya Prince. So what do you think about the 4 in here? He's up on the board at 12-1.
Yeah, he's going to be up against it a little bit from a pace standpoint because we don't see a ton of speed in this race, and he is one that does feel like he's got to use that closing style. That's just the way that he runs. He did encounter some stretch traffic last time. Wasn't ever steadying, but he did have to wait behind horses in mid-stretch of that DeHaas before getting to the outside. Still never felt like he was really getting there and just wasn't nearly as good as Nothing Better that day, but he's a solid, consistent runner who could be picking up some pieces at the end.
Senbei is a New York bred multiple stakes winner who won the 5 of the first 6 races in his career, only one for his last 10. But in really isolating a lot of his races, he feels like a horse that this 6 furlong turf trip should be right up his alley. And for turf sprints, they're not all equal. We see trips at Kentucky Downs are different than trips down the hill at Santa Anita. They're different than the 5 furlong turf sprints over at Gulfstream Park. But a 6 furlong turf sprint, David, feels like it's perfect for a horse like this because he kind of has some natural kind of tactical speed. He's not going to be a horse who's on the lead, but he can kind of put himself in the race. So he does seem like he fits pretty well in here. What do you think about Senbei's chances?
Yeah, he's only run on the turf 5 times. And when you said, as you said, when you start to take apart those races, there are excuses for when he hasn't showed up. And when he's gotten the right set of circumstances, he generally runs well enough to win a race like this. I think we saw that too back when he was going this 6 furlong distance at Aqueduct, got a good stalking trip, chasing a fast pace, but he really fired in the stretch to put that field away, earned a speed figure that makes him competitive in here. And then last time out, he was beaten ahead by Nothing Better, but had to cover a little more ground than that rival. He's another one that I thought got a ride that was a bit too passive that day, and he's a horse that does have the tactical speed to be forward in here.
Son of a Birch comes out of a 3rd place finish behind Outlaw Kid. 2 starts back, was able to defeat Maya Prince. Another one, though, on speed figures who just feels like he's going to have to improve quite a bit and probably run the race of his life to get the better of this group.
Yeah, he got a very good trip when he beat Maya Prince 2 back. I mean, they both did. They just came through along the inside. Still's going to have to run faster to beat a field like this. And he's coming off a bit of a layoff. We haven't seen him in 3 months. So just kind of wonder where he's been and if he's ready for his very best race stepping up in class.
Number 7, Determined Kingdom, is a Virginia-bred stakes winner. He's had a very nice 2024 so far. 3 wins. His 4 best buyer speed figures have all been this year, so he's really stepped up. And he actually defeated Outlaw Kid, who's probably considered a contender in this race. I'm just not sure if this is really as far as he wants to go. He's pretty quick, and I'm imagining that he'll be forwardly placed in here, but he's only been 6 furlongs on the synthetic. He's never won a race beyond 5.5, and now he'll have to try to win going 6 furlongs against one of the tougher groups he's faced recently, David. So while I respect his ability, I think he's a really cool horse to root for, and I think he's had a very good start to 2024 this year. This is a tough spot. This feels kind of like the acid test. I think maybe his ceiling is more of an underneath type minor award in here.
Yeah, when you're looking at the Timeform US pace projector and kind of starting with this horse because he might actually be the one setting the pace in a race that doesn't feature a whole lot of pace, you want to make the case for him. But you start to go through his races. He's been facing slightly lesser competition. He got to crawl up front through the opening quarter when he beat Outlaw Kid 4 back. He competed against Open Company 2 back in that Van Cleef Stakes. And looking through the field in DRF Formulator, you can kind of go in the charts and see how horses ran back. Almost every horse in that field came back to significantly regress from a Beyer speed figure standpoint. So I think there are some ways to poke holes in his form. That said, he's got the speed and he's going to be a decent price. So I understand the case for him.
The number 8 is Alagoon, who's done most of his work at 5.5 furlongs, and he's actually capable of some really big races. He got a nice trip coming from off the pace a little bit last time out, earned a 95 Beyer speed figure in winning that stakes race over at Parks. And he owns a win going 6 furlongs on the turf at Aqueduct. I was actually on the lead, David, back in 2022 when he used to be more of a pace setter, and now he's become more of a tactical kind of sit off the pace, middle of the pack type horse. I just don't know if he gets his trip in here. I think he's the type of horse when there's a couple speeds and he can sit behind them, he could really get a nice setup. This is a good spot for him, though. I mean, it feels from a class standpoint, you have him at 6-1. It feels like a really nice level for him. What do you think about his chances of winning this one?
He lacks the consistency of some others in here. His ceiling makes him very competitive in this race, such as when he was second by a head in the DeHaas last year behind eventual Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner No Balls. And since then, he's run some races that almost rise to that level, such as when he came off the layoff in the Elusive Quality, didn't get the easiest trip that day, going wide, and still ran a good third over this course. I thought his next couple of starts were kind of disappointing, including the Jaipur, where I get that he was never going to be Cogburn that day, but he got a decent trip stalking outside and just had no answer in the stretch. It did seem like maybe he got back on track last time in the Parks Dash, but he's a tough horse to trust to run that big race from one start to the next.
Rounding out the field is the number 9, Nothing Better, who has speed, and they wanted to use that speed, probably the fastest in here, but can also sit off the pace a little bit. He's a 5-time stakes winner. He's an 11-time winner. Some positives. He's proven at Aqueduct, proven at 6 furlongs. In fact, his career best was last November, going 6 furlongs in a stake at Aqueduct. He earned a 98 Beyer speed figure that day, and he defeated Algoon, who could be a top rival of his in this particular race. So lots of positives for me, and even with the outside draw, that probably gives him some options to kind of look over, see what the rest of the field wants to do, and if they're not going that quick, they could kind of press the button and go with him. So I think he's probably the horse to beat, David, but from a gambling standpoint, I'm not really sure what kind of a price we're going to get on him.
If I was confident that they were going to send this horse to the front, I'd be hard-pressed to pick against him in this race because he's got such gate speed, and he can also finish. He gets this 6 furlong distance. He's done it at Aqueduct. There's so much to like about this horse, but ever since they made this jockey switch to Jorge Ruiz, he took him back the first time, and it worked. He won that Wolf Hill Stakes, but then it seems like he's gotten in his head that this horse has to rate in the next couple of starts. He outbroke the field by a length in the Select Stakes. He had the lead to himself, and Ruiz just took a hold of him and was intent on dragging him back behind horses that were slower than him, and he kind of forced the horse to lose the race. It didn't make any sense to me in that moment. Rated again last time and almost got the job done, but it feels like they're taking away this horse's best weapon, and unless they change tactics, I felt like he could be slightly undervalued in here.
Let's get to the selections for this one, David. For the Belmont Turf Sprint, you're going to go with Sembai on top.
Yeah, he's just a horse that has the tactical speed that I like. And I think when you start to pick through his races, it's easy to make the case that this is the right kind of trip for him. And his best race makes him competitive with this bunch. I don't think he's going to be favored. He's not going to be some huge price. I think about 5-1 in the morning line, like I've said him, is fair enough. And I just think he makes enough sense in this spot.
A horse that I think has a high ceiling that maybe if it gets forgotten about and floats up a little bit, keep an eye on Outlaw Kid. Unlikely with a jockey like Flavian Pratt aboard, but a horse who has the high ceiling, kind of like you mentioned with Algoon. Those horses, sometimes they can get dismissed on the tote. And if they do float up a little bit, maybe they're horses who you kind of find some value in with them. So I'll go 9, 2, 3, 8. 5, 9, 2, 4 for David. However you're playing race number 6 on Saturday at Belmont at the Big A, we wish you the best of luck.
Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com race of the days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.